Hey everybody, it's Greg Rice here in the Bucket, Pawtucket, Rhode Island. All right, it's a beautiful Saturday afternoon. I just did some wonderful hot yoga. Shout out and hello to my good friends over at Providence Power Yoga, 365 Eddy Street. You should definitely check them out, okay? Now today's bill that we're going to talk about is my least favorite bill, and probably yours as a landlord, okay? It's a very disgusting bill, I might add, because it's calling for rent control. They want to control how much money you can charge, how much money you can make, how much money your property's worth. They want to control that. Does that sound American to you? Does that sound capitalistic to you? Does that sound opportunistic to you? The answer is no, no, and no. Okay, so what we're going to do first is introduce the starting lineup. And in this case, there's only one. Usually there's 10. And we want to say good afternoon and welcome to Representative Enrique Sanchez, and we'll put him up, boom, right on the screen, just so you can get an idea on this young man, okay? He's 27 years old, a first-term representative, and we'll also put up his district. He's District 9, okay, which covers areas in Providence, Union Ave, Messer Street, parts of Broad Street in that department, okay? So this bill actually was supposed to be heard about a week or two ago. It got pushed back, and we'll be hearing it on the 11th of April. So depending on when this video gets released, I might have some more news for you. But first things first, I want to go over the bill, all right? It's House Bill 7891, and this is House Municipal Government and Housing. And as always, they lay the foundation. So the General Assembly finds and declares that a serious state of emergency exists in the city of Providence with respect to housing. And I have such a great quote I'm going to read you. Such a great quote. We'll get to that. Whereby there is an inadequate supply of low-cost rental housing, that further action to protect residents from exorbitant rent increases and evictions is necessary to address serious threats to public health, safety, and general welfare, including housing insecurity, rent burden, homelessness, displacement, and further finds that a rent control ordinance will address the most egregious rent increases. I don't know if it will address the most egregious tax increases, though. Probably not. So, the city of Providence, okay? We're just talking about Providence here. This is not statewide. Rent control in the city of Providence. The city of Providence may, by ordinance, establish regulations to control the rent in multifamily housing, okay? The city may provide reasonable exemptions for such rent control, okay? Properties with 6 or fewer dwelling units in which one of those units is owner-occupied. Hotels, motels, Holiday Inn. Who remembers Chingy? Who remembers Chingy? Housing accommodations in a nonprofit, religious facilities, dormitories for colleges, ground-up new construction, physical additions to an existing building, conversions, right? These are all of the exceptions. The city, on an annual basis, may set an annual maximum percentage rent increase for rental units covered by this section, okay? Based on the Rent Affordability Index. For purposes of this section, that index means a price index for housing rental markets based on a clear and concise indicator of rental affordability relative to household incomes. Now, this is where we get into the meat and potatoes. For rental dwelling units covered, meaning you're not exempt, an owner, landlord, shall not, over the course of any 12-month period, increase the gross rental rate more than the percentage allowed in subsection B of this section, times the lowest gross rental rate charged for that tenant at any time during the 12 months prior to the effective date of the increase. Okay? For a new tenancy in which no tenant from the prior tenancy remains in lawful possession of the dwelling unit, the owner may establish the initial rental rate not subject to this section. Okay, this section is only applicable to subsequent increases after that initial rent rate, okay, has been established. The city may provide for fair return standards for the regulation of rent, which may include, but are not limited to, changes to permissible rental rates based upon certain circumstances and capital costs and rapid increases in property taxes. The city may set tenant notification and rental registration requirements as necessary to effectuate this section, which means, hey, in order to track you, in order to control you more, not only controlling your money, we're going to control and see that you're following our control. We could set up tenant notification systems and a registration, okay, for all rental properties. The city may also establish or designate an administrator or board to promulgate, very good word, regulations pursuant to this section and govern that local rent control. This also includes just cause evictions, which I'm not going to get into, and talks about condos, cooperatives, demolitions, okay? Mr. Sanchez has an interesting take on this housing market. It's the polar opposite of my opinion. My opinion, as I've said before, is we're not in a housing crisis. We are in a demand crisis. Demand means people want to be here. They have to be here. They go to school here. They work here. Yada, yada, yada. Throughout the course of this ascension, you could say, in Rhode Island's come up, it was not always this way. However, there have always been people with affordability problems, people that have trouble paying their rent, people that are getting evicted, people that don't make enough. That problem has existed and will exist for the continuance of mankind. We cannot get away from that. That's the way it works. So, what's my point? My point is, rent control would be throwing sand and water on top of a beautiful burning blaze. And in this metaphor, the burning blaze is Rhode Island's success, its desirability, okay, its draw, its value. Mr. Sanchez wants to take a truckload of sand and dump that sand on top of centuries of hard work in this great state. Now, who uses rent control? There's a few states, okay? And I actually have my testimony that I'm going to give, and I reference those states. So, currently California, New York, which have the highest population exoduses in the whole country. Largest population, largest exoduses. Okay? California, New York, followed by New Jersey and Maryland. Okay? People spread out from New York. Maine, Oregon, and Minnesota. And these states, typically it's enacted in the cities. And then what happens is the government realizes, oh shit, where did the landlords go? How come these buildings aren't getting fixed? How come our tax bills are not getting paid? How come we're making cuts to our police, fire, school departments? How come we're laying off staff at City Hall? How come we can't keep our streets clean? How come crime is rising? How come? I don't know. It's because you threw sand on the fire. And that's exactly what this bill does. It's aiming to help people, right? That's the goal. Mr. Sanchez's bill is aiming to help people that are less fortunate, that are impoverished, okay? Maybe they're not documented, okay? It says right on the website. He works as a case manager, helping undocumented young people. And his district is prone to that area of Providence. We all know that. So, my point is, will this solve the state's housing crisis? And I am going to refer now to the mayor of Providence. The mayor of Providence, then candidate, Brett Smiley, said on September 9th, 2022, when it came to rent stabilization, which people say, oh, stabilization is only this much and rent control means that much. Tomatoes. You're capping the rent amounts. Okay, I don't want to hear it. Candidate Smiley at the time contended via the Providence Journal, okay, Amy Russo, that, quote, rent stabilization doesn't work. Rent stabilization doesn't work. Brett Smiley. That's it. He continued, however, quote, under a rent stabilization model, there are too many people left out. Property owners stop properly maintaining buildings, and it does absolutely nothing to control costs or the tax burden on property owners. This is the mayor of Providence now. This bill is meant for the city of Providence now. This doesn't add up. That doesn't make sense. I represent a portion of Providence, right? Mr. Sanchez. And then the mayor represents all of Providence. And this bill from the representative is aiming to control rent in all of Providence. Have they talked? Are they on the same page? I don't know. And what I also don't know is why there's only one sponsor. That's interesting to me. Typically, like I said, there's about 10. Maybe the other House reps don't like it. They don't believe in it. I didn't see anything in the speaker's package that mentioned rent control as a way to spur housing development and ease the burden. I didn't see it. And then I see the mayor of the city not supporting it also. But there's some other things too that rent control does to hurt us and to hurt the community. The proposed cure here is worse than the problem. Rent control policies reduce the incentive to purchase housing. People are going to look at it like, I can only charge that much for rent for that building and I got to pay this much? I'm all set. I'll invest in Massachusetts. I'll invest in Connecticut. I'll invest in the stock market. I'll open a business. The amount of landlords will plummet. The amount of nonprofit landlords will accelerate. The quality of the buildings will deteriorate. The communities will worsen because the incentive to purchase it by the free market, people like me, we're all set. Too much risk. Too much liability. Not interested. It will suffocate tax rolls for municipalities over time. And I'll elaborate on that. Property's value is determined by its income. for the multifamilies. So if a property today, for example, has 3 units, and each unit's getting $2,000, $6,000 is your monthly rent roll. That property is probably worth $500,000, maybe $600,000. But in a rent control scenario, say those are $1,200 each. Now that property is only worth $300,000, right? $400,000. So the cities and towns who assess their properties, typically every 3 years for tax purposes, only have a property that's worth $350,000 instead of a property that would be worth $600,000. So yes, your taxes would be a little bit better over time, but from the cities and towns perspective, their tax roll can only be so much. And that's why I say suffocated. It's going to keep it here because the rents can only be here. You follow me? When you have a free market and the rents are here, like last 2 years, in Woonsocket, my taxes went up 50%. But you know what? My rents went up 50%. So it's relative. But cities and towns likely will not be supporting this because it's going to limit their budgets, limit their services, limit how much they can pay people, limit how many people they can hire, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so that's what I mean by that. Simply also, it'll deter and prevent landlords from keeping up with maintenance. We don't have any more money. It's all gone. Most landlords are just skating by as it is in a free market situation. Imagine if you capped our rents and then people aren't paying too. We're still going to be evicting people. You don't think this is going to solve evictions, right? We're still going to be in court with just less money. And then you want us to fix stuff too? Very tricky. There's going to be a pressure for landlords to quickly sell properties also. If this ever got enacted, it would be a mass exodus of landlords. Property for sale. Take it. I don't want it. And just about 40% of the state's population are renters. So think about that. Think about that. Say if a quarter of the properties were put up for sale. It's a lot. A lot of changing hands. A lot of tenants that would be left out in the dark. A lot of properties that would fall into disrepair like that. Third world country. This also will subsidize high-income residents, which is an interesting thing. So say, for example, Station Row in Providence, right downtown, right next to the train station. Say there's a finance bro that commutes right there every day to Boston, comes back to Providence. Station Row gets hit with rent control. They're in Providence. So finance bro's apartment can only be $1,200. That's the most they could charge him. And he's making $150K a year in Boston. He's never going to leave that apartment, first and foremost. And second, he can afford that 10 times over. So he's going to pay the $1,200 and say, you know what? With all my extra money that I'm not paying for housing, let me take a trip to Mexico. Let me go to the Dominican. Let me go to Portugal. Let me give my money to other people. And thank you, Providence, for financing my vacation. Okay, so that's going to happen. It'll also decrease housing options for low-income tenants. Who would have thought that? Because that's the whole goal of Mr. Sanchez's bill. He wants to help low-income folks. What happens is when rent control goes in effect, people want to stay wherever they are. They don't care. I'm staying. I'm in my rent control unit. I'm not leaving. And if I am leaving, I'm illegally subletting it to my cousin, to my brother, to my whomever. I am never relinquishing control of my rent control, the apartment. So, the people that are coming up, young adults, young families, looking for housing, they're still not going to be able to find it because nobody's going to be moving. And if they are moving, they're probably moving out of the state. Forget about it. This will also pummel the small landlord. That's a given. All of these bills pummel the little guy, the little girl. They get hit because they have so much bureaucracy, so much red tape. Then you throw in the lead, right? The lead law is coming into effect. It's just too much. It's too much to follow. It's too much to abide by. It's too much to spend on. So I'm out. Give it to a big conglomerate. Let a hedge fund buy it. Let a big time developer buy it. Knock it down, build an apartment building. The small people, who big people once were, right? You don't just get big, you become small, and you gradually change into big. It's going to deter our most basic and fundamental core value as Americans. It's capitalism. Buying something, making it better, doing it again and again, and excelling up that American ladder. Small guys knocked out with this. And as I mentioned before, in the low-income tenant section, this does nothing for the new renters and encourages the illegal subletting, which a lot of times, when it comes to the subletting, they're making money. So say they're in a rent control unit of $1,200. It's worth $2,000. The folks who have the certificate to live here are going to illegally sublet that to whomever and charge them a premium. So they're going to pay the landlord the $1,200. They're going to collect the $2,000 from here. Okay, possibly that happens a lot in the undocumented communities. These folks don't know what's going on. And that's not their fault. They don't know. They're just trying to find a place to live. They're getting preyed upon. Give me your $2,000. You could stay here. No problem. And then the $1,200, like, hey, yeah, $1,200. He's got $800. He's going on vacation. Or maybe he's got, I don't know, maybe he's got multiple apartments that he's illegally subletting on. A whole ring of them. You get 5, 6 of those situations, you got yourself a regular salary. In closing here, have I hit anything that's good about this yet? I'm trying to find the silver lining. There's nothing good about it. It will kill the city. It will kill the state. It will kill investment. It will kill the future for our families, our children, their children. It will obliterate our values as Americans and the principles that this country was founded upon. So, you must get involved. And if you don't want to testify in person, that's okay. You can send emails, very simple. And I'll put up on the screen the Rhode Island Coalition of Housing Providers. Join the Facebook group. Just get to see what's going on. You don't have to jump in full bore like I am. But just get involved. Become a student of the game. Hopefully this dies a quick death. We don't want to see this progress. And we're going to pummel it on April 11th. We're going to show up in full force. And we are going to make our voices heard. Per usual. Alright, so once again, thank you for listening. And I apologize, I got a little, what do they call that? Bird in my throat? Something like that. Just getting over a little bit of a cold. So thank you for listening, and I will see you next time. This is probably going to be a regular thing, and I will continue to inform you and educate you and empower you. Okay, so once again, Greg Rice here in the bucket, your property and your rent control managed.